Yo, Boondogglers here. Welcome back. Appreciate you coming in. Tarpit, how's it going, dude? What's going on? We freaking victory this week.
Dude, I'm just so happy to be in America again.
We were so right.
I don't even love America. Man, the emotions I've had, the patriotism I've had this week is like nothing I've ever felt.
Yeah, I felt the same thing. I mean, Georgia turned blue. I'm in Georgia.
Oh,
it was freaking moment in history. So insane. So insane.
I'm gonna bake your neighbors a cake.
I know, right? Well, actually, my neighbors are, two of them are Trump voters, so.
Well, then we bake them a cake that says, "How the fuck does it
Get
feel?"
fucked.
Yeah, get fucked cake.
But
well,
yeah, man.
Such a good feeling.
Yeah.
Just being right from last week.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's take it in a non-political direction for today.
Okay.
I was hoping that you and I would basically set up a one-player video game from scratch. Like,
are you pitching this as an idea and we're going to talk about it, or is this an idea just kind of an idea?
We're gonna go from zero to idea throughout this episode.
All right. And do you want to actually do this?
What do you mean, make the game?
Yeah.
Hell no.
Okay. That's what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah. I want to be unconstrained by optimization concerns or your and my abilities.
All right.
I just want to go back and forth and chat about kind of like maybe some type of dream game.
Yeah,
I'm thinking
fun.
one player because I don't want this to just be like our dream PvP game.
Right.
You know, our dream MMO. Like that's too easy.
Yeah.
One player games, they have stories kind of closer to like a movie.
Yeah. True.
So I was thinking it might be fun to just talk about, you know, a next gen game off the top of the dome, and then you know, we'll pitch it to
Bethesda.
Yeah, we'll pitch it to Bethesda at the end.
Yeah. Well, I know that your idea, and an idea that I am also kind of thought about before I heard your idea, and is a game that is no HUD, and everything in the world is a physical indicator, and it's like, for example, you see muddy prints in the ground, an animal left that, you track that down. Instead of it saying beep 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 minimap, you know, animal here, it's like you gotta freaking get in the mud and like find it. Birds go off in the distance. Oh, it may be over there. Maybe like smell, you know, maybe on the screen somehow. But I think that's the future of maybe not all video games, of course, but I think it's the future of a very next level genre.
Yeah, I agree. I like that. Well, okay, so let's start with like a set and setting. Like, what's a set and setting that would especially go for that? Like, you know, it could be almost like a cyberpunk thing. Like, it could be like a high tech but also ghetto future, and maybe the tech lets us put indicators in the real world. So you can still do footprints on like a rainy city street.
Right.
You could also have like a sparking cable, and you like follow the malfunctioning power cable. Yeah. You know, you could draw people around like with the technology.
Yeah, that would be an easy way to do that. In my head, I was envisioning like primitive.
Yeah.
But I think that you may be right. If we were going to approach it, I think that we could make it really easy to have a non-HUD physical in the game. Like, yeah, like power lines and sparking shit, and yeah. So maybe we go that route. But I did have primitive.
Yeah, I default to primitive a lot myself too. What are some of your favorite one-player games?
Well, I would say my favorite game of all time is Dark Souls 3. Now, thing about Dark Souls 3 is it's very HUD oriented. Witcher 3, super HUD oriented. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Probably third favorite game, pretty much zero HUD, is Uncharted. And it does a really good job kind of guiding you around without a HUD, actually. Even
never
though it is
played that one.
linear.
Who's the enemy? Who are you fighting, or are you fighting in that game?
It's pretty much just it's like, they call it, the newest one is called open linear. So it's like half open world. So you kind of have like a direction, but you can explore all around, and you have, the main bad guys that you're trying to fight, and you're both looking for treasure at the same time. And it's not a very complicated game. It's like, it's not like a family game, but it kind of almost could be a family game. It's just very,
Sure.
like, you just interpret it very directly, and it's just beautiful and super fun. Yeah.
Are there like
Uncharted is amazing.
outposts of enemies? Like Far
Yeah,
Cry
you go
style?
from outpost to outpost, cutscene, another outpost, adventure, and then enemies are ahead, and so the whole thing is just very linear, and even in the story. But I think my dream game would be zero linear. Like, it would,
Yeah.
there would be no direction. That's why I love Dark Souls so much. Half the game, or maybe a quarter of the game, is hidden by something that, like, I didn't know for a year, and I just like found it on YouTube, and I was like, wait, I'm freaking missing this entire part of the game, entire ending, behind like a puzzle that the game doesn't tell you about. No tutorials. That would be, I would take that to an even more hardcore level and just have so much hidden.
Right. I like that. And in Dark Souls, is there an order that you go through the bosses no matter what?
No. You can. Well, it's not. It's mostly in order, but you can go and do like extra bosses, or there's like one of two ways that you can go at one point. But it's suggested that you do them in order. Yeah.
Got you.
And they get harder and harder.
Right. Okay, so imagine like a half destroyed, half overly high tech city world. And maybe it is basically a boss fight game. But utterly open world. Nothing that draws you from one boss to the other per se.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I like the idea of bosses.
definitely.
And I also like the idea that you kind of have to, like, let's say open world, let's just say there's like 10 bosses, or let's say there's like 5 bosses.
Okay.
And it doesn't tell you which one to do first, but there's obviously a least hardest to hardest boss. And it's kind of your job as a gamer to, like, go in and be like, oh shit, this is not, I'm not ready for this yet. Go to another boss. Oh, well, I don't, have that frickin' spear crafted yet. Go to the first boss.
Yeah.
Oh, got that. So it's like you have to figure it out yourself. I just like games that just throw you on, your ass. And
Hell yeah. That's an interesting use of stealth, too. It's a stealth game because if you go into an area guns blazing, the chances that you're ready for it are very low.
yeah.
So you're kind of creeping around and even just getting the lay of the land as like the first act of the game.
Yeah, I
And,
think
like,
stealth
plotting
is the way to go. Like, it's the most next level feeling when a stealth game is like just perfectly made, like Metal Gear.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Just feels so insane. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Far Cry, Uncharted, they have these camps of kind of shit mobs, basically. And Dark Souls, Mortal Shell, you have these elaborate bosses that you're moving from one to the one. What about in a 2090 AD city? What if it was kind of like torn apart by gangs? And so and the bosses of the gangs are cybernetically enhanced.
Okay.
So you kind of get both. You get the like taking down pirates who, aren't overly OP. But then if you kill all the gang members, now you're face to face with someone who has, we could do elaborate sci-fi boss design because these kind of gang leaders have put their wealth into their bodies and they have types of powers that you might not even know from looking at them and stuff.
Yeah. I like that, and I think that we could probably blend. I mean, you may be getting at this, but if we blended primitive and like cyber tech, that could be insane. So it's like, you know,
Yeah.
I think we're talking about the crafting system. If our crafting system was just super realistic, like it's not like there's no menu, you know. So if you want to craft a cyber spear, you know, you would take like the chunk of some, you know, electronic, you know, whatever, and hold it and put your stick down and mount it on there and duct tape it on there, and I think that would be pretty insane. Super physical crafting like that.
Yeah.
And all your indicators, since it's cyber, could just be like on your weapon. Like you could have to like maybe examine your weapon to see how much charge it has or something. That would be so cool.
That would be so cool. Dude, I mean, yeah, the feeling of going from like full homeless primitive through high tech
Yeah.
in like a future, I mean, that would be really, really wild. I mean, if you were starting by like gutting guys with a broken bottle and moving up.
Oh man, that'd be so cool.
To like tech stuff, that's a pretty overpowered combination.
Oh man, see, now I want to make it. I mean,
so, well, go ahead. Your aesthetic and your Blender aesthetic, man, you could make the most broken, glitchy, high tech ghetto city of all time.
Yeah.
It's like in your wheelhouse. Okay, so what games come closest to this type of actually physical feeling crafting experience?
Hunt showed. Oh, crafting.
Yeah, you mentioned this type of physical crafting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Hunt in a minute, but I was gonna try to generate a list of games that are getting close to this kind of true crafting feel. I would submit that The Forest does a pretty good job.
I was gonna say The Forest, yeah.
If you get
The Forest
a
does a
tooth,
good job.
you add a tooth to your club, and now you see the tooth get added to the club. And
yeah, you could put like bark armor on. You actually see it like on your arms as it grows. Yeah, The Forest is pretty insane. I think The Forest 2 is coming out. Have you?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Yeah, that's gonna be sick. Yeah, The Forest is a good job. Have you played Green Hell?
No, but
I think
it
that's
basically
like,
seems like a next gen Forest.
Yeah. I actually bought it day one, and I returned it that day because it was so broken day one.
Yeah.
But now it looks amazing. There's like updating it. The devs are pretty consistent and talk to their community, pretty open with their community. I actually want to get back into that. But yeah, Green Hell, I mean, I shouldn't be saying it if I don't know, but I think it has a pretty awesome forest-like crafting system, maybe even more physical.
That's cool. That's a game that's on my list, actually. I was reading reviews and people were talking about how much they were dying, and I was just like, oh, this sounds like me.
Yeah. Exactly. You and I both love games that we just get crushed.
Yeah. Yep. True.
Yeah.
True.
You made one that you get crushed.
I guess so. We've been trying to pull it back from that edge, but all the games that inspired Animist are games that just crush you and overwhelm you. That's true.
Yeah. Oh, what about Life is Feudal? What's that crafting system like?
I never crafted in it. It is Life is Feudal is an interesting game. Basically in that game, all skills require so much investment that if you have someone that you play with that crafts, then that's what they do. And you need them to be online to get armor.
Yeah, that just shows how big that game. Just you saying I haven't crafted before just shows like how insane that game is.
That is I think a weakness of the game though. Even though that hardcore edge is really awesome, and it's amazing that there are games like that. Having the feeling of, oh man, I'm just texting my friend the Hound, like hoping he can get on because I need some armor, and like I know he's asleep, but he just has to get on for 5 minutes and like make me some armor real quick. That is it's a cool feeling when you're talking about the game as the dev, but as a player, I think it's something that doesn't really work.
Yeah, that's true. You know, like, yeah, it's weird with games because when you say like, oh, you know, I just really want to play a realistic game, or I wish there were more hardcore realistic games out. A lot of people can confuse that with, you know, real life realism. I think that there's a difference between video game realism or video game realism and real life realism. And I think a lot of devs even get that wrong.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the features in Escape from Tarkov are like the devs are like, oh, this is gonna be so realistic, and
Yeah.
it's not as cool as the fake realistic features. Not as fun, rather. So yeah, I
There's a
think
difference
that
between maybe immersion
yeah,
and realism.
yeah, for sure. But I think both you and I know that, so we would, if our game was centered around that idea, it could just be crushingly realistic, but not in a non-fun realistic way.
Yeah, right. Right. That's interesting. That's like also like the relationship between like grind and fun
Mm-hmm.
is not always easy to think about.
Yeah, grind is a weird one in games because sometimes it's just like amazing, just obsessed with the grind, and then sometimes it's shitty.
Going back to the crafting, you ever heard of Hand Simulator?
Yeah, I've played Hand Simulator. Yeah.
You have. So did you see the demo of Hand Simulator Survival?
No.
You should check it out. It's pretty radical. They have like guys on a desert island playing together, and they're like building. They're trying to build a shelter.
Does it look just like Hand Simulator?
I
Can I
guess
visualize
so,
it in the
but
same way?
yeah, yes. Though you're outdoors on a desert island.
Yeah.
And these guys are putting their shelter together. Like one person brings a piece of wood over, and then someone else like holds down the piece of wood while person A hammers it in. It's
Man.
all like jiggly physicsy, so they're literally building their house piece by piece. It's not
Oh, that's
gridded.
so cool.
It is really cool. Hand Simulator Survival, I don't even know if it's out or playable, but it's one of those things I've seen where I'm like, that's the future right fucking there. Like they're like making a floor, and you literally have, like two guys like carrying it and placing it, and then if they place it right, then one guy's like putting nails in, the other guy's holding it down so it doesn't jump around when he puts the nails. It's like really kind of crazy.
That is super cool. And that's actually the thing about Hand Simulator is it's like you almost have fun with the fact that it's so, I don't want to say janky, but part of it, it's not like you play Hand Simulator going, wow, this is so like, this is so realistic. Like, this is how hands work. Like, I'm actually like trying to pick up, like you play Hand Simulator because you're like laughing that you can't pick up the bottle.
Yeah.
And you're just struggling so hard to like write something with a pencil. So yeah, like in terms of building the house, I don't know if I would have more fun, or I don't know if it's designed to be more fun to be like with your friends, like trying to nail a board for 30 minutes and just like dying of laughter, like that it just doesn't work. Or the fact that you're like, whoa, this is like so physical and we're actually like putting it down. Like, are they going for that, or is it's just kind of
it
in the funny way?
Well, it seems to me like they're going like in Hand Simulator Survival, the video I saw, it's definitely more going for that than Hand Sim.
Looks more refined, yeah.
It looks a little bit less like, I mean, I think they want you to be able to put together a whole structure.
Yeah.
As opposed to just dying on the floor because everything's just wiggling. Like there's a limit to what like wiggle, how fun like ragdoll laughs are.
I wonder if it's VR. It's not VR, is it?
Oh, I believe so.
Oh,
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Hand Simulator's VR.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would our game be VR?
Well, that's an interesting question. I guess if a game is VR, you start thinking about controls and how much simpler they are, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, what if our crafting system was physics based?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could have magnets.
Mm-hmm.
You could magnetize things. Maybe you could, dip something in glue and now it gains like a stickiness.
Yeah.
Property.
Yeah. Could be sick.
This sounds pretty next gen, but if there was some system for kind of for the game to kind of analyze the thing you had made, basically, and assign it various scores like weight, sharpness,
Yeah.
electrifiedness.
Yeah.
You know, if the weight of the weapon was tied to the speed of your swing, you know, you could divide up damage into different layers. So you would have like shock damage, blunt damage, you know, bleedy damage,
Hmm.
concussion damage. You could have all these different things, and then whatever you make, the engine would analyze your thing and give it a list of stats.
Yeah. Like Mordhau has a really good physics-based damage system. So like the harder you swing, the more damage you do. I think like the longer you swing or something like that, it builds up momentum and does more damage or something. So yeah, that would be pretty sick. And you know, Mordhau feels. See, I don't know. Like Mordhau would be cool in VR, but you know, a lot of people say. I mean, I don't think like that many people believe this, but a lot of people say VR is the future of gaming, and I just don't think it is. I just think there's something, you know, really special about having the control of a keyboard and mouse and not being bound by something on your face. I think VR is amazing, and I think it's going to progress and be insane. But I think there is, you know, I still think that this level of control can allow you to do so much more. Mordhau, I feel like is more fun on a mouse and keyboard than it would be in VR. And
That's interesting.
Mordhau feels really physical. Like you can feel your character, you can like look down and see your whole body, and it just feels super physical. I feel like if we were to make our game like you know, like making it on the Mordhau engine would work really well. And yeah, it feels like it's perfectly suited. And it's too bad they put like a bunch of HUD on your screen and shit. Or I think they do. I remember I hope I'm not saying I think I'm correct in saying that Mordhau has like a bunch of HUD, and I wasn't happy about that because Mordhau would be so nice if it was just perfectly clear.
Yeah.
Everything was, you know, all the HUD stuff was physical based, and it was just pure like physical combat.
That might be the cleanest PvP system I've ever played.
Yeah.
So what if there's some type of power source, and you're generally able to maybe pull cybernetic parts off the bosses as you kill them, but you're limited in the amount of power that you can kind of carry with you. Like you get like a battery backpack or something. So when you kill a boss, remember we were talking about Mortal Shell, and I was like, man, this game would be crazy if you like inhabited each boss and killed the next boss with that boss. Like if the boss was your shell. So what if in ours it was more like you're picking and choosing abilities from the bosses you kill?
Yeah.
And because it's cybernetic, you're like, you know, ripping their arm off, and you're like, okay, you know what? They have this OP arm, and it's gonna take my whole battery charge to like bitch slap someone with it. But
really
the
cool
bitch
idea.
slap is so OP, we're gonna just take that.
Piece yourself together.
You develop your build out of the skills. And then that's
really
kind of
cool.
the next gen of crafting. Like you need to freaking break a broomstick and, you know, I don't know, dip it in acid to fucking kill the low level goons. And then you're working your way up to the bosses, and you're actually getting this kind of futuristic tech.
Yeah, totally. Well, that reminded me of not the boss thing, but rather like the breaking the broomstick in half, and that's super physical based. I don't even know what to call it. Like whatever. It's Half-Life Alyx. I'm sure you've seen that. It's like the most next level VR game ever, and the graphics are like insane for a VR game, and you know, the physics are nuts. Like you can like you can break stuff in half. I think maybe if you pick up a bottle, you can like see the water moving in it. And
Wow.
yeah, that game's insane. I think you can like pull a pin from a grenade, and it just feels super real. That would be. I wish that you had seen. I wish that you have seen gameplay of that, because that's a really good. That would be a really good reference point for us if we were making a VR game.
So in terms of breaking stuff open, that basically, it seems like, you know, without really elaborate alternative systems, that's what's possible with like voxel based engines. You know that term.
Yeah.
Like I've seen basically experimental demos where everything is voxel, and if you're a robot, you're breaking down a brick building and you take your arm and like swipe it through the bricks. There's like even like finger marks in the bricks as you like broke the wall, and
or the bread being torn apart. That's
right,
super.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, have you seen Teardown?
Mm-mm.
It's this new voxel-based game that came out. Looks really, really nice. It's basically like, kind of looks like Minecraft, but if each Minecraft block was like 100 blocks, so it's more densely packed, and it is the physics are just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's voxel, so you can get like a big excavator and go into a building and like pull out the wall, and driving a car through a wall is super whatever, and you can shoot down parts of a roof and it will fall down. You can go up it, and I actually really want to get that game. You should check out Teardown.
I'll look into it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the future.
Yeah, for sure.
And from
like
an
when that
optimization
looks like
point of
our
view-
games now, it's going to be insane.
Yeah, exactly. That's a little bit off or a little ways off, because I'm just thinking about it like, optimization wise, and it just is, compared to the general game engine meta now, it's just a super next level processing challenge.
Yeah. I don't think it's that far off though, because now with the next gen consoles coming out and Unreal Engine 5 coming out, I've seen some demos in Unreal Engine 4 voxel shit, and with pretty good graphic. Man, see that now. This is the time I wish we could bring up videos, because now we're getting whatever. He's shooting like it was Unity, actually. It's Unity. He's shooting like this laser beam at this like insanely, I think probably photo scanned rock, and the rock is just kind of like melting away, and it's just a big, huge vertical rock, and he starts breaking it down around, and it's like falling when it's too much weight on one side, and it just looks insanely realistic, and it runs in real time, 60 FPS in Unity. So I don't think it's a matter. I don't think it's really that the technology isn't there. I think it's just that, especially now with the next gen stuff, I think we're going to see that probably in the next year.
Sure. Well, since we're developing for one player, that's one of the fun parts.
Yeah. I don't know that would be possible in multiplayer. Well, probably.
Anything that's possible in one player is just farther off in multiplayer.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. But we could imagine this cityscape as just being just completely destructible, just gorgeously over the top.
Might as well.
Destructible.
Maybe take pieces of a building and put it in your weapon. Take car parts out.
Right. Yeah, imagine you kill a bunch of gang members, you kill their boss, and now you're in their hideout, and you're freaking like stripping wiring out of the walls.
Yeah.
You're crafting with the stuff that's in there as well.
That'll be so cool.
You and I both love base building and making homes in games.
Yep.
So maybe that's a part of ours. Maybe maybe you could maybe you set up a home and you can bring cybernetic body parts from your enemies back home and bank them.
Maybe that's how you break them down. You have to go home and at your crafting table or something like that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Have like a whole hunk of an arm. You like slap it on the table and you gotta like pull shit apart.
Right.
Yeah, that would be insane.
And then there's only so much power you have, like in your backpack. So when you leave the house, you have a particular build.
Yeah.
But you could leave the house, try to kill a boss, fail, go home, retool your like body and kit, and then go back and try again. So
oh man,
you're not just learning Harden and using it. You're not just figuring out, oh yeah, there's a silenced grenade launcher, and if I get that, the whole game is like a one tap.
Right.
It's more like you're constantly finding your pathway through the game using different weapons that you took from your enemies.
Yeah. And I think for, if we're going to spend so much time, I mean, these kind of mechanics could take us years to develop. If we're going to spend so much time on making sure that, that each action in the game is just so detailed like that, we have to make sure that the game is, that the replayability is really, really high. So how do we ensure that like we're really, I know we're going crazy and thinking of like the most insane technology that we could use, but realistically speaking, we wouldn't be capable of making some, really long game. So we'd have to somehow figure out a way to make it super replayable while in a relatively, approachable size, relatively small game. And I think the way that you do that is you just make everything so fucking hard that you have to spend a couple months until you're like, it's like DayZ. Like you get DayZ, you spend a couple weeks just figuring out how to get off the beach. I think our game is like that.
Literally how to drink water and not get sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm down. I like it. I like the fusion of the kind of anti-pirate game with the big boss game too, because maybe you could go around and kill every gang member and still feel like you're not ready to take on the first boss.
Yeah.
There could be kind of levels to it like that.
Yeah, for sure. And
also, what if...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we might be able to... It's like you can, from a dev point of view, you can buff things with technology, and you can buff things just simply with grindy work. So, like, for example, let's say we wanted a footprint system, and the footprints decay over time. The technology version of that would be like maybe even considering like fluid dynamic sim or some type of like evaporation sim, something that would allow the footprint to degrade procedurally over time. And then just putting in the work on the dev end side of thing would be like, well, we make a whole bunch of footprint models, and we make 10 footprint models that are fresh, 10 footprint models that are medium fresh, 10 footprint models that are medium, 10 footprint models that are medium old, 10 footprint models that are old. And so, the game engine would randomly select between each of these models as the footprint degrades in time. And we would just be basically leveraging our willingness to do a ton of work to create a mind-blowingly deep system.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like the game engine, it wasn't the game engine doing that for us. So one thing I was going to say in terms of replayability would be we could make a lot more bosses than you play on a playthrough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
You load up a game, your city's infested with a dozen different gangs, each with their own unique boss. And there's actually 100 gangs and 100 bosses in the engine.
Oh, you're talking about like a procedurally generated map?
I'm talking about a fake procedurally generated situation.
Okay.
Where
the computer just rolls the dice.
When a new player plays a game, the engine populates their game instance with 10 out of 100 possible bosses.
Right.
And your playthrough is really difficult getting from boss 1 to 2 and from 2 all the way to 10.
Yeah.
But you re-roll the dice, and maybe you share a boss. Maybe he's in a different hideout than he was. But it's totally likely that, 9 out of 10 of them would actually be different.
Yeah, what?
Imagine if Mortal Shell did that.
Yeah.
Straight up
it would be so cool.
12 times as many bosses as they did, and then they just give them to you in a somewhat more random fashion or something. I mean, a lot of, time is money, and I can just say for such a fact that when you're actually working on a game, anything that's a shortcut just seems super, super appealing.
Yeah.
But since we're not working on this and we're just imagining it, you could do a lot of futuristic things just by putting in more work than other teams. Like, that's an example.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Are you familiar with, is it called Revenant? No. Shoot, what's the game that's like procedurally generated? There's a game that has procedurally generated bosses.
Really?
And
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Shoot, I really wish I could. I think it's Revenant. Yeah. Oh, Revenant from the Ashes. remnant from the ashes.
Remnant.
Procedurally generated map. Procedurally, or actually, you know what? It may not be procedural. It may be what we're talking about. Couple, 100 different instances, and then it just assigns you one. But yeah, the bosses are in different order. I think that sometimes you get like a rare boss, and that game does a really. I was actually blown away by that about a year and a half ago. You would really enjoy that game. They actually constantly update. I think a new update just came out. Big update. Right. But yeah, that game does a really good job at that. And but it's not like you have to start a new story, like what we're talking about. It's not like you have to start a new story to get new bosses. It kind of just has a bunch of bosses and just puts them in a different order in a different place.
Yeah. Yeah.
What if ours was like, we have 5 bosses, and instead of making 100 like somewhat detailed bosses, we make like 5 ridiculously detailed bosses with longer, storylines, longer, maybe not storylines, bigger maps, whatever. And you get assigned 1 boss per playthrough. Just 1. So you're working for 1 thing that entire time.
Like your city is run by this mafia, and you need to kill your way to the top.
Yeah, and then like second playthrough, it's like different location, farther in the city, totally. Deeper in the city.
My only adjustment there is that I would need the foot soldiers. I would need some of the foot soldiers to be cybernetically enhanced too. So you are doing this thing of taking powers from people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a world where you spend 60 hours getting ready to fight the boss, and then 60 hours on the boss, and that's your like 120-hour playthrough.
Hell yeah!
Like that motherfucker is difficult and takes time.
Man, that would be cool. What would our fights look like? What would a boss fight look like? Because I don't think it should be a traditional step into the arena, fight the boss. I think it should be like more of a kind of an out of the box approach to a boss fight. Something that really hasn't been done before. With like a slow breakdown, maybe not necessarily just combat, maybe something different.
Maybe there's some options other than killing gang members that turn them to your side. Like maybe you could drug a gang member. Like, what if there was a drug that you could put in a dart gun that just made someone, like, rage out at whoever is around them?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a drug you could put in a dart gun that, like, makes them like a zombie. You can, like, lead them around.
Yeah. Now we're describing Dishonored.
Are we?
Yeah. Yeah, Dishonored's like that. You can mind control and... yeah, Dishonored's an awesome one. You should play Dishonored, too. Yeah, you can mind control and slow down time and turn a guy and make him shoot his friend in the head and stuff like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there could be a lot of versions of that. There could be... I mean, if you're taking powers from enemies that you break down, yeah, I mean, maybe there's even, cybernetic powers that, like, turn into, like, persuasion abilities and stuff like that. Maybe there's a way you could play where...
No kill run.
You're actually convincing people to turn against their own boss, or you're convincing them just to walk away. That's kind of interesting. When we were talking about the base, I was picturing some type of system whereby maybe you could collect NPCs that get added to your base too. So maybe when you're infiltrating a gang's hideout, and there's a guy at the door, and there's all these different things you could do to him. You could potentially just elbow him into oblivion. You could potentially maybe even give him a gift and have a conversation where you're like, I've been setting up this safe place, and if you want to come, like, work to have a roof over your head, you can do so in my base.
Yeah.
Or maybe you could just literally, plant the seeds of freedom in someone's mind and just watch them be like, you know what, fuck this city, like.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be a farmer, like just put his gun down and just walk out of the city,
Yeah.
or worlds where you just leave everyone dead and you show up, with as many of their weapons as you could possibly hold. And
Yeah. We could approach that really well. Like, I'm thinking we get like even more up close and personal with our stuff. Like, instead of thinking of an outpost being, like taking control of an outpost full of gang members, instead of thinking of it being like, 100, 200 gang members, what if it was like 5 people? So each, engagement with a person is just super personal. Like, you have like a whole 5 hours of just like, sure, gonna figure out what you're gonna do with this guy. And I think that would be pretty sick. Like, everything is just like, take a game and just make it just fucking gritty as hell and in your face and slow, but super detailed.
And the backstory for each of those NPCs is coded into them. So let's say you can give gifts, and let's say there's all types of food in the game, and this guy at the door, like, his mom made pie, and she made the best pie. And if you give him different types of food, there's different math on how persuasive it would be, but if you manage to give him a pie, he would just melt because you're like hitting this like pleasure center from his child.
Yeah, and you would find that out by like eavesdropping or something like that. Watching his movement, see where he goes, what he does that day.
Yeah, I mean, give everyone 5 vulnerabilities like that. 3 of them can be found out. 3 of them are literally just hidden and waiting to be exploited. And maybe put on a forum somewhere online or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I like that idea. I mean, in Far Cry, the pirates, I mean, they literally, it sounds like they have like 14 things that they say between like 10 different pirate character models.
Yeah. And
you're like sitting in the bushes outside, and the pirates are like walking around the camp, and they're being like, man, it burns when I piss. Yeah. It's like, well, it's like, man, you should get that looked at. And then you're at the fucking next, you're at the next camp and you hear the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It always blew my mind that game companies don't, it's like, just hire more voice actors, just hire writers, if you have like 12 things that are like, it burns when I piss, and the boss is riding my ass, just make it 1,200 things. Like, just pay someone.
Yeah, like Skyrim.
To do that. Skyrim does that?
Yeah. Yeah, every NPC is different. Their own, person.
Yeah. One player.
Yeah.
So we're talking about taking that to the ultimate level. So we're talking about one boss in a playthrough, and
like 4 of his best companions that are like sticking around his like general area, and you just like eavesdrop, watch what their movements, figure them out. Maybe some of them are like just straight up evil, but like you don't know that they're evil. Right. And you gotta like, and then you're like, whoa, this dude is evil. And then you're like, all right, I'm gonna kill that fucker. And then this guy, he's awesome. Maybe he'll join my team. And then he joins your team. And yeah.
I like it. So we're talking about the replayability. What if we took the replayability and brought it into the game? So what if it's like your city is owned by one mob. You really need to study them. And you really need to trial and error and understand how to actually take down this group. And then maybe you take them down and you have a period of like regrouping, and you're taking tech from their hideout, and you're buffing your base. And then another gang attempts to take control of the city. Maybe your base even gets attacked by this new gang. So you lose some of your progress. And you keep some of it. And now you are scrambling to maintain your gains against a scarier gang. And so we actually take those playthroughs and we kind of line them up in line.
Yeah. Losing progress is an interesting, just the concept of losing progress isn't really something you have in single player games. Like, think about that. The game taking something away from you. Like, not story based, not like your character like gets hurt and like, has to crawl to safety or whatever. Like, literally losing something that you earned in the game. Like, you only get that in multiplayer games. So how could we translate that into a single player game?
If this game is voxel based, and wipe day is a gang coming to, like a new gang, like raiding you, then the raid could be a physics based raid of your stuff. And so maybe you play through your first gang, you build your first house, your first new gang comes to take progress from you, and you realize, oh shit, none of my valuable stuff should have been on an outer wall of my base. Because they're going to come blow up bombs, they're going to come do poison gases, they're going to come do these things that actually are physics based. And so the next time as you build your hideout, you build it with you build it defensively against this kind of physics based raid.
Yeah.
Take out the second gang. Now the third gang raids you with the same tools plus a couple new tools. So each time you're kind of scrambling to like predict how bad the next raid might be, and how could you possibly build something that would preemptively defend your progress. Yeah,
like events, like real-time events in a single-player game. It's a really good idea. Wait, are we talking about this would be scripted? Or, like, I'm thinking random attacks. Like, just AI.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I'm picturing is you take out the gang members, you take out the boss, and you're in a period where you're like, enjoying the spoils and applying them to your base and applying them to your build, and then at a certain point, like, bombs will go off and like do their thing, and depending on how you build, you might lose a lot of it, you might keep a lot of it. No matter what, this new gang that invaded, they're going to be more challenging than the last. And, we could assign that. So if we have 10 bosses and the game gives them to you one at a time, they could have dynamic stats. Mm-hmm. So basically if there's like a boss with a long beard, he could have like an electricity stun punch, but the stun punch does 10 damage if he's the second boss you fight, and it would do 40 damage if he's the fifth boss you fight.
Good way to balance it.
So the story seems procedural, but the difficulty will scale dynamically depending on the order that you're given. Yeah,
that's a good idea. That is a good way to balance it. So there's no like real order of the bosses. It's not like the hardest one and the easiest one. It just depends on, which one you literally fight first. And
that's replayable too.
Yeah.
If you have a boss that,
like you'd fight the same boss twice, but he's different each time.
Yeah, they're different, and the strong version of Weapon A versus the weak version of Weapon A, they require different strats to overcome.
Totally. Yeah, and I think I think that you and I are comfortable with just intense trial and error in games, and I think a lot of people are. I mean, super avid DayZ players certainly are, but I feel like this game would just be the most hardcore trial and error ever. Like, that's how you would learn. There's no tutorial, there's no story. Everything in the game is just like so rich with detail that it's like that's kind of the story. So you're really finding things out by, that doesn't work, or that did work, or whatever. How many people are, obviously we're not making a game that's, well, I guess it's a good question. Are we making a game for a large amount of people, or are we making a game for a small amount of people that would be okay with just getting punished?
I mean, that's an important question for whatever art you're making. Like, who do I want to make this art for, and what type of art am I most equipped to make really, really well? Like, this is something I've had to think about a lot, because like my music tends to be for like music nerds, like tends to be for people who are listening like somewhat for pleasure and also somewhat out of interest.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a slightly different listening mode than what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know how to feel, because when you're making, to a degree, it comes down to the fact that I'm making music for, honestly, educated folks. Folks who have a baseline of education and probably a baseline of connectivity to a more nerdy music discourse.
Yeah.
In game development, you have to reckon with the fact that you are making art for rich people. Like, you're making art for people with nice computers.
Yeah.
And I feel like the maybe not the way to solve that problem, but one of the ways to help guide thinking around that is also, like, not just what is the art I want to make, but what is the art that I'm uniquely equipped to make.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've learned about myself that if I tried to make pop that everyone would love and would buff most people's day, it wouldn't work. My skill set doesn't align with that goal, and I would be, it wouldn't be hot to anyone.
Right.
So it takes a mixture of being like, who am I making it for, and who, and what can I make?
Yeah.
Because if you're writing theory that literally only grad students and folks with PhDs will ever read, but that's an example of an art form that's for a very small population and a very privileged population. But it's possible to make the decision about yourself. That is how I can speak the loudest. So I think that, given your and my instincts, if we tried to make something that was appealing to casuals, it wouldn't even work.
Yeah.
All of our instincts are for, like, the bleeding edge of masochistic gamers. And I think that our goal should be to deliver that experience to as many people as possible. But yeah, that's the experience.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, that's interesting. While you were saying that, I was thinking, what if we just made our game, because, we're talking super physical based everything.
Mm-hmm.
What if we just made our game just dumb as hell? Like, just so primitive that it's just like building blocks. And it's in a super hyper realistic world. It's a hyper detailed world. But you don't have to know anything. You don't have to have any education to hit the rock up against the other rock and freaking get a chipped rock and duct tape it with a stick. Like, what if we just made it so primitive that it's just open to, it could just be appreciated by every level of people. I think that would be kind of interesting too. Because, what game devs think about making a game in terms of, like, what class of people they are, or maybe not class is the right word, but, what level of like, experience in games, experience in education in the real world. What game devs consider that when they're making a game?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guess they kind of do. But I think they think of it more in, like, well, this is a game for hardcore gamers, or this is a game for casual gamers. But what if we thought of it like, this is a game for smart people, or this is a game for, like, every human?
You don't need language.
Don't need language
to interpret it. Like, what if our guiding principles was, like, so difficult and so obvious?
Yeah. Yeah, just the most primitive possible. I mean, it can be like cyber whatever, but it can still be primitive in that way. I think that may be an interesting way to go.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. We'd be designing problems that were just, maybe difficult to do, but almost anyone could look at the problem and understand the goal piece by piece.
Yeah, could be appreciated just by that.
I submit, especially when you were talking about trial and error being a huge part of the gameplay, I submit that you don't die.
Okay.
Maybe you lose stuff. Maybe you get kicked to the curb. maybe you're naked and nobody cares about you anymore. But I tend to think that death in games is kind of unnecessary, and is an obvious part of the game loop where folks put the game down, be it one player or a two player. Like, am I really gonna do another life tonight? Am I really gonna re-gear out of all my chests and go out and raid again tonight, or is this the end of my night? Well, I guess it's the end of my night.
Right.
So I think if you have a game where people are constantly probing the game for trial and error,
I know how to do
really
that.
awesome. It'd be really awesome to never send them to a "you died" screen.
Yeah,
but
totally.
Just push them up the ladder or down the ladder, and so you'd never have that moment of being like, well, it's 2 a.m. I'm done for the night.
For sure. Yeah. That I think totally agreed, and I think I know a system that could work for that. It's one of my movie ideas that when your current character dies, you become the character that killed you.
Mm-hmm.
What if
Yeah.
our game was like that? So you get killed by one of the bandits, you become the bandit, and then once you become that bandit, so maybe there's like strategic dying. So like you become the bandit, and then you have access to the other bandits, but maybe there's like levels of the camp, so it's like you can't get into the second level. And but yeah, aside from the details, what if you just became the person that killed you?
Yeah. All you need is storytelling about tech in this world where you can download your brain to a chip. You could maybe, forcibly put that chip in someone else's brain and take them over.
Yeah.
I think in a future tech world, this could almost be kind of like a surrogate style world where everyone is controlling meat puppets, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you look at a random guy who's protecting a door to a hideout, and you can assume that he's been like jumping from person to person for like the last 80 years. And like everyone's lives at this point are like divorced from like the biology they were born with. And everyone's kind of, scrapping their lives together by like taking from others and taking other people over.
Yeah.
Because that could create a tactical death, or like, a moment where you like run up to someone and you like pull your brain chip out and like slap it on the back of their head.
That'd be cool.
And, like, crumple, and now you're them. But
be
maybe it'd be easy to fuck it up, or it's maybe it's a lot less risky to talk to them, make them your friend, and then pitch them on the Switch. And then it's guaranteed to work. Or
Yeah.
you could try to stealth switch, and who knows what happens? Maybe you make a sound and they turn around and now you're in a fight you're not ready for, or something like that.
Yeah. And that would allow us to, if everyone's just controlling meat puppets, that would allow us to just get like really gory with our deaths. Like we could justify some just like fucked up, just destruction of the human body. What do you think about gore? Because that's like my favorite thing to think about.
Voxel gore? Yes.
Just like you crush someone's head in with a rock and it's like their teeth are like, whatever. I think that would be pretty insane. Totally. And maybe you're like, maybe like when you control that dude, like half your vision is gone or something because you like crushed his eye and you have to like be careful not to like fuck his body up. Like you destroy his leg while you're killing him, and then like you're limping, and
like sense organ tech could be a big part of the game.
Yeah.
You could be, because we could combine this with the concept of pulling apart other dead enemies too.
Yeah.
So maybe you jump into someone because you want to be them, and then their friend has the really good eyes. So instead of jumping into their friend, you actually murder the friend and just take the eyes.
That's a cool idea.
Or maybe it's cheaper for you to jump into them and then move some tech over, but you're kind of managing who do I possess versus building the meat puppet I am possessing, and kind of both go together.
Yeah, we'd have to implement some sort of incentive to stay with one body, and also give you reason to sometimes go to other bodies, because we don't just want you like, well, I mean, I guess it would be cool if you just like if body jumping was just a main gameplay mechanic. Like you're just constantly, like you're just expecting to just be body jumping all the time. But I think it would be cool if it's like, okay, well, I got the body that I want, and he has this skill, so I'm gonna try to like upgrade him. And I don't want to go to any of the buddies right now because it doesn't apply to my situation or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what if I was talking about the fact that you have like a battery charge that allows you to combine powers. What if that doesn't move? And that buffs. So if you've been working with the same meat puppet, that battery charge capacity is like slowly creeping up. But then you see someone who's super tall or super short. Something you really want about their meat puppet.
So you sacrifice your battery.
You move into it, you lose that progress, but now you're at a new baseline, and that baseline is rising up. And it's kind of like a tactical choice to set yourself back, to increase the ceiling in other ways.
Yeah. Man, see, I wonder if games like this are going to exist in 20, 30 years.
Guaranteed. I mean, we didn't come up with a single idea we talked about today. We're just mixing and matching things we've played. So I was just talking with my friend Mike last night about how so we're talking about this book, Red Mars, which was written in, I believe, 91, and is an incredibly well-researched, scientifically plausible narrative about the colonizing of Mars in like the 2050s. One of the most special books I've ever read. And then my friend Mike goes, oh, I heard this quote somewhere that said the best artists predict the future. And I was thinking about it, and it's like, yeah, I think it's true, because the best artists, what they really do is they lucidly analyze the present, and everybody else is behind. And that is why Kim Stanley Robinson in 1991 was able to look around, read the tea leaves, and see that not just colonizing Mars, but actually how we're going to colonize Mars, and the political fallout from that. It was all figured out by humanity even as early as 91.
Wow.
If you really opened your eyes, you really did the research, and you really broke down the science of how it could happen.
Wow.
So I think there's a dimension to that in all art forms, because if you make some music that's truly 2020 musically speaking, and synthesizing exactly the musical moment we're in now. I mean, all the journalists that have been writing about music in the teens, they literally haven't heard that. Like, they're still processing like 2018 and before, and that's their job. So it's just an interesting mechanic, but I think that, like, for example, as artists, like the artistic hallmarks of the 2020s, they're here around us.
Right.
They're mixed in with the teens and the aughts and the 90s and all sorts of other things. But in 2030, we will be able to look back on 2020 and say, if we knew where to look, we could see the content landmarks that were coming.
Yeah.
And so it's one of my favorite games in music, in everything, to just pretend to imagine that I'm trying to see those things and just wonder, okay, like what are the, because in 1980, in 1979, there was some music that sounded 80s as hell.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we only know that now because we know what happened in the 80s. So that means that, the raw ingredients for the next decade, they are here, they're all around us.
Right.
And it's kind of a fun, in gaming and music and whatever. But that's why I feel like, this, different versions of what we're talking about, we are kind of describing, basically, I think, the future of RPGs.
Yeah, totally. What games, I think, there's not many games that I can say that you could look back in, 10 years and say, whoa, that's like really close to what we have going on right now. Like, this is insane. They were super ahead of their time. I think for the games that I would say are like that right now, Hunt Showdown would definitely be on there. Absolutely.
I was going to ask you if you remembered what you were going to say about Hunt earlier.
Yeah. What I was going to say about Hunt is it's Hunt. It's not Mordhau. It's Hunt that I'm so disappointed with the HUD. because Hunt, it's such a beautiful game. It's CryEngine. Everything is custom photo scanned, and it's just ridiculously good looking. Prints in the mud and birds off in the distance, giving you a clue of where people are. Multiplayer. That game has so much HUD. It's just ridiculous. It's just everything is fucking HUD. And man, I wish that someone could. I wish they would just redesign the game to just have no HUD. That's a 2030 game. Hunt Showdown with no HUD. Well, I shouldn't say no HUD because HUDs are sometimes good. But in my eyes, 2030 Hunt Showdown with no HUD is a 2030 game. What about you? Do you have any like games that are like way ahead of their time that you
That's interesting.
think about?
What games that are out now, are clearly pointing the way to the future? I mean, I'm picturing in 2030 Mordhau with 1,000 people on either side.
Yeah.
For one, I think Mordhau is about as next gen an immersion experience as I've ever had.
Yeah, for sure.
Didn't last forever. I think I have about 60 hours in that game, but
every
single one of those 60 hours, Dead and I were looking at each other like, we love this game.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of came to a hard end.
Why'd that come to such a hard stop? It did that for me too. One day I was just like, I don't want to play this game. I don't know why that happened. It was just so amazing, but I don't know, I just got bored.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a PvP game will never compete with a mixed PvE PvP game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, totally. If you took the Mordhau system and you mapped it onto like a Gloria Victis living world, for example, that's something I would probably still be playing.
Yeah. Oh my God, how could I forget Escape from Tarkov? Escape from Tarkov is a 2030 game.
Pointing the way, yeah. All the different poses, like the flexibility in your character movement.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that should have happened back in 2010. Like,
yeah.
Hey, what if we just give them every, like scaling your movement speed with a number,
yep.
Crouching and everything in between. That's a good example of what I was talking about earlier, where there's nothing mechanically futuristic about that. They just put in the work.
Yeah.
That other devs were like, WASD is fine.
For sure.
And they were like, well, but what if we just made WASD seem small?
Yeah.
That's hell.
Yeah.
That's definitely a cool one. I remember watching your streams of that game. That's just all I was thinking, was just like, damn, yeah, this is...
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
This is the next gen. And
it's PvE, PvP. So, well, yeah, I mean, the traders and the whole economy system and missions and all that stuff. Their plans for that game is to have it be open world and airdrops. The traders are not going to be in a menu system. The traders will be like in person. So, you go and you find the trader and you do all that stuff. So, if you just get rid of the menu screen in Escape from Tarkov and just all of those mechanics were implemented physically into the world, Jesus Christ. I mean, that's their plan. That is their plan.
So do you think it's going to be like a traditional MMO where everyone's in the same world? Or do you think it's going to be like all the raids are connected, so you escape one and then you go into another and they're all persistent?
That's a good question. My feeling is that there will be raid servers and each server will have like 50 people on it, and it lasts like 5 hours or something like that. So when you go, you say you step out of the main outpost and you go into the world, it's like you enter a server with people that are queuing in, queuing out.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably how it will work. I don't think it's going to be single shard.
Yeah.
Single shard is a good like thing to talk about too, because that's next level. Animist single shard.
Single shard is next level. It also brings with it some next level challenges. Single shard PvP games are bad for streaming, for example.
Yeah, true.
When I was in GV, I asked my guild leader, "Hey, do you mind if I stream?" And she was like, could you put like a couple minute delay on it? And that's tactical.
Yeah.
And it's not tactical for the game devs to make a game where
that's unstreamable.
Streaming the game is not tactical in the game.
Right.
And that is That is exactly what we've done
Yeah.
with Animus for sure. So that there's a super special magic to single shard, but it also kind of seems like
Just has to be done really, really well, balanced correctly.
I wonder if there's any game other than Eve that's popular. That's a single shard. I think they're all obscure as hell, other than Eve Online.
Yeah, I think it's probably yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Think about one troll who was committed to ruining Animus. They basically could sit in the noob area and just be the worst.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we would implement constraints on whatever that individual person was trying to pull off. You know, like if they were using toxic speech, we could implement chat filters and all this thing. But generally speaking, if you get raided by someone and you're super salty and now you're seeing them in the main town area every day go by you, like that's not necessarily like an escape for a lot of people.
Right.
It's like the small town of a single shard game is what's so amazing. People have reputations.
Yeah.
People know each other. People really form friendships, and the game has history within the game. But all of that can be bad if the history was bad, and there's nowhere to run. There's no way to play, play Animist without, Tarpit griefing me. And so single shard is a couple of years ago, I was like, why isn't every MMO this way? This is how it should be. And now I'm beginning to realize, there's definitely some problems that single shard games need to think about. And that's something Dead and I, are actively thinking about. But
yeah,
it's a little harder than some kind of unexpected challenges have come up in that.
Yeah, for such a just amazing idea, it really is like you just want it to work so bad. But I'm just trying to think maybe like a game that isn't necessary. Like how could you maybe like a single shard game would work great if griefing just wasn't a thing. Like you wouldn't have an advantage stream sniping. You wouldn't have an advantage just freaking following someone around and trolling them all day.
Yeah.
So maybe single shard is the future for less less progression based, less competitive games.
Yeah, right.
Maybe single shard is just like, it would just be amazing for a game that everyone's just kind of like friendly and positive and working for one
collaborative
thing.
PvE.
Yeah.
No, that's true. And I think also that, talking about games 10 years from now, it could be that once a single shard gets big enough, you kind of solve those problems, and that's what Eve did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In Mortal Online, there's a lot of different cities, and there are people that live in the different cities and base their whole game lives out of those cities.
Yeah.
Now, when I was playing Mortal, it was like 100 to 500 people on at any given time. If you had 1,000 to 5,000 people on at any given time, that would literally mean that if someone's annoying me in Tindrum, I could actually make the choice to load up my horses, move to Beth Jeddah, which was a city that takes 40 minutes on a horse to even go from Tindrum to Beth.
Wow.
And now I would reorient my whole gameplay around that different place, and that would be incredibly immersive.
Yeah.
The problem is that with a low pop single shard game, it really is the same 100 people, and then it's effortless for that asshole to follow you around, or you're going to see them no matter what, or sell to them, and that's not a great emotion.
Yeah. And, probably one of the reasons why you don't see many single shard is just because, it's risky to be the developer to say, well, we're going to bet on that this works. Like if I was an indie developer, I wouldn't do single shard just because it just seems like all the odds are against you.
Yeah.
But maybe some, AAA huge developer wants to say, all right, you know what? We're just going to make the best single shard game of all time. Maybe they would just pull it off and it would just instantly just become, the meta.
Eventually, yeah. But look at Atlas. Was that Atlas?
Oh God, that game is so bad.
Not really.
Yeah.
Maybe in a couple of years Atlas will be the shit, but the whole concept of we're gonna nail it and drop it doesn't really work.
Yeah. God, that game sucked. I had that day one and it was just fucking, it was insanity.
It might get good.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know, Gloria Victis was terrible day one, and about 4 years later, my friends started hitting me up, being like, "Yo, this game has actually got good now."
That's cool.
I will say that for my own future in game dev, I think the next game I work on, I do not want it to be a game that needs population to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
When before Animist came out, so being on Steam is kind of crazy, just because of how big Steam is. Before Animist came out, when we had a Steam store, and we were looking at the impressions that our store page was getting, we were thinking that we might need overflow servers day one. We had 250,000 impressions on our store in like 2 months of the game being out. Now, an impression might just be the name Animist in a list when people are going down the list. An impression means like eyeballs on the pixels somehow. But the numbers were so great that we were kind of thinking like, damn, do Steam games... Because really all Animist needs is like 8 people 24/7.
Yeah.
So we were kind of thinking like, oh man, do Steam games just get players because they're on Steam? So we had really no experience and no way to know how much of a struggle it would be to even with a free game build that tiny little player base. But you know, absolutely no regrets at all. But it is an interesting thought to me where it's like, if Dead and I had been updating a 1-player game for the last 3 years, you know, my guess is the project would be more successful by this time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, no regrets, of course, because I mean you've learned so much, and Animist is freaking badass. But yeah, I mean if you had been putting that time into a single player game, that's interesting. It's interesting.
Also, from the art design side, the 1-player game, it's more of a fantasy for me now too, because, you know, just optimization is such a limit on what I'm allowed to do in the Animist world.
Right.
And if it, you know, for a 1-player game, it would be so much less so. I mean, I would be out here being like, you know, the ivy on the walls is blowing in the wind.
Yeah.
All those details would be really fun.
Totally. Yeah. How long have we been going?
Hour 20. I think that's a nice.
Hey.
That's a nice. I want to play our game.
Me too, dude. I mean, it's the future. 20. All right, we're gonna call it 2035. We're gonna see something sort of like this. Sort of like this. Ultra realistic, voxel based, no HUD. I want it.
Yeah, I think even sooner. I think around. I think in the second half of this decade, we're gonna start to see that level of physics sim and that level of like character design and writing we were talking about just become possible.
Yeah.
Processing power scale up.
Yep.
I think probably as soon as you get the first like truly code-free 3D game creation engine, we will witness an explosion in this field like we have never seen.
Interesting. Yeah, you're right. You're right about that.
There's going to be middle schoolers creating masterpieces.
That's true.
You know, and that's what happened in music. Is that you went from needing money, bandmates, recording studio, and hours to make an album, to you need a MacBook, and you can make an album in your bedroom as a 14-year-old.
Right.
And there are some 14-year-olds that have made some badass albums actually this decade.
Yeah.
So, you know, I see that coming in gaming. I think that might be a big part of the picture too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that was fun, dude.
Awesome,
thanks for the topic. That was awesome.
Cool. See you guys next week. This has been Boondogglers episode 4.
Oh yeah.
America!
Later!